I still had blood on my uniform when I ran up the courthouse steps. Not mine. A stranger's. A 12-year-old boy named Caleb, who had been pinned under the dashboard of his mother's SUV on the interstate for 11 minutes before we got him out. I had his blood on my sleeve and gravel dust ground into my knees from kneeling on the asphalt. And I still had my radio clipped to my chest because I hadn't taken 30 seconds to breathe, let alone change clothes. I ran through those glass doors of my heart still hammering from the cool, thinking I had made it in time. I was wrong about that in more ways than one. The security guard at the metal detector looked at me the way people look at something they don't quite know how to explain. Not fear exactly. Something closer to pity. I asked him which courtroom the Bennett Rourke ceremony was in. He hesitated before he answered, and that hesitation told me something was wrong before he said a single word. Third floor, he said. But ma'am, I think you should know. They moved the time up. I didn't wait for him to finish. I was already running. By the time I reached the courtroom doors, my legs were shaking, and not from the run. I pushed through, and the room went silent in that specific way a room goes. Silent when everyone already knows. Something you don't. My mother was near the back, one hand pressed flat against her chest. My grandmother was gripping her cane so hard, her knuckles had gone white. And at the front of the room, in the ivory dress I had helped her pick out 4 months earlier, was my sister, Bailey, standing next to Tyler, my Tyler. The judge was already closing his folder. Tyler's mother, Diane, was the first to reach me. She looked me over. The blood, the dust, the radio still clipped to my chest, and she smiled in a way I will remember for the rest of my life. Not kindness, satisfaction. You're a little late, sweetheart, she said. These things wait for no one. I turned toward the door because I genuinely did not know what else my body was capable of doing in that moment. And that is when I saw a man standing in the doorway, holding a leather folder, watching me with an expression that was not confusion. It was recognition, like he had been waiting for me to walk through that exact door. But before I tell you what happened next, you need to understand how I got here. You need to understand who I was before that morning, and what I actually lost, and what I found underneath all of it. My name is Emma Rourke. I'm 29 years old, and I've worked as a paramedic in Denver for the last 6 years. I did not grow up dreaming about ambulances or trauma bays. I grew up in my father's diner, a small 24-hour place called Rourke's, tucked between a laundromat and a hardware store in a working-class neighborhood on the west side. My father built that place from nothing, 1 plate of eggs at a time. And some of my earliest memories are of sitting on a flour sack in the back kitchen doing homework while he flipped pancakes and hummed old country songs off-key. I have one sister, Bailey, 2 years younger than me. Growing up, Bailey was the bright one, the funny one, the one who could walk into any room and have everyone laughing within 5 minutes. I was quieter, more serious. I liked biology class and volunteering at the free clinic downtown. People used to say Bailey got the personality and I got the discipline, as if we'd been split into 2 incomplete halves of the same person. I never minded the comparison much. I loved my sister. I still do. Even now. Even after everything. Our father passed away when I was 24. A heart attack in the diner kitchen on a Tuesday morning during the breakfast rush. He left the diner to both of us in a trust. But because I was older, and because Bailey had just finished a marketing degree and wanted operational control, the arrangement we settled into felt natural at the time. I was named trustee and majority owner on paper, since I was the one with a stable income and no debt, but Bailey ran the daily business. She hired staff, managed the books with our accountant, made decisions about the menu and the hours. I worked my paramedic shifts and stopped by twice a week to check in, sign whatever needed signing, and eat a plate of my father's pancake recipe that Bailey had learned to make almost exactly right. I met Tyler Bennett at a charity fundraiser for the Hospital Foundation almost 3 years ago. He worked in commercial construction, managing development projects around the metro area. He was warm and easy to talk to, the kind of man who remembered small details from previous conversations and brought them up weeks later. On our third date, he asked me detailed questions about trauma, protocols, and actually listened to the answers instead of just waiting for his turn to talk. I liked that about him immediately. I liked a lot of things about him immediately, which in hindsight should have made me more careful, not less. Tyler's mother, Diane, made her opinion of me clear from the very first dinner. She was a retired real estate agent who still dressed like she had an open house to run, and she had very specific ideas about the kind of woman her son deserved. A woman who kept regular hours. A woman who would be home for dinner. A woman who didn't smell like antiseptic and adrenaline 3 nights a week. She never said any of this outright. She said it in the careful, needling way some people specialize in, comments wrapped in concern, insults dressed up as advice. She never spoke to Bailey that way. Bailey she adored. Bailey was warm and available and always had time for a phone call. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself Tyler loved me, and that was the only opinion that counted. Tyler proposed on a Sunday morning in our kitchen. No elaborate setup, just him. Coffee going cold on the counter, and a ring he'd clearly been carrying around nervously for days. I said yes before he finished the sentence. We planned a small courthouse wedding for October, family only, followed by dinner at a restaurant downtown. I didn't want a big production. I had seen too many. Friends spend a year planning a single day while the actual relationship quietly starved in the background. I wanted the marriage. I did not need the spectacle. Bailey was my maid of honor. She helped me choose my dress. She sat with me through 2 dress fittings, teasing me the entire time about how I stood like I was bracing for a call. She planned a small dinner with my closest friends the week before the wedding. She seemed, in every visible way, genuinely happy for me. Looking back now, I can see the small things I missed. The way she and Tyler always seemed to be, finishing each other's sentences at family dinners. The way she started showing up at his job sites, under the excuse of discussing the diner's finances. The way Diane's face would light up the moment Bailey walked into a room, and settle into something colder whenever I did. I missed all of it, because I trusted them both completely. And trust, I have learned, makes people remarkably easy to blind. 2 weeks before the wedding, I got called into a shift swap I almost refused. A colleague's father had passed away suddenly, and she needed someone to cover her Saturday rotation, the exact Saturday of my wedding, for the early morning shift only. I told her I could cover from 6 a.m. until 11, which would give me plenty of time to shower, get dressed, and make it to the courthouse by 2 in the afternoon. I told Tyler about the arrangement. He went quiet on the phone for a moment, and then said, "That should be fine, just don't be late." I should have heard something underneath that pause. I did not. The morning of the wedding started normally. Routine calls, a fall victim, a minor traffic accident. Then, at 10:40, dispatch sent us to a multi-vehicle collision on the interstate, involving a school bus and 2 passenger vehicles. When we arrived, I found a 12-year-old boy named Caleb trapped beneath the dashboard of his mother's crushed SUV, unconscious, losing blood from a leg laceration that had nicked something important. Extraction took 11 minutes that felt like 11 hours. I climbed into that wreck myself to hold pressure on his leg, while the fire crew worked the jaws of life around us, glass and metal groaning, his mother screaming his name from the shoulder of the highway. By the time we had him stable and loaded, it was already past noon. I called Tyler from the back of the ambulance. It rang twice and went to voicemail. I texted him, "Emergency call, running late. Please wait for me. I love you. I am coming." I did not get a response. I got back to the station at 1:15, showered in record time, threw on the dress hanging in my locker for exactly this kind of contingency, and drove to the courthouse with my hair still damp, blood still under my fingernails no matter how hard I'd scrubbed. I arrived at 1:58, 2 minutes before our scheduled time. Except the ceremony had already happened. My mother told me, voice shaking, that Diane had convinced Tyler to move the time up to 1 o'clock that morning, claiming a scheduling conflict with the judge. By the time I walked through those doors, it had been over for nearly an hour, and Bailey was standing where I was supposed to stand, in the dress I had picked, holding a bouquet of white ranunculus, the exact flowers I had chosen for myself. I stood frozen in that courtroom while Diane crossed the floor toward me with that terrible, satisfied smile, and I turned toward the exit because my body simply refused to process what my eyes were seeing. That is when I noticed the man in the doorway. Mid-50s, calm, a worn leather folder under one arm, and an expression that told me he already knew exactly who I was. "Emma Rourke?" he asked. I nodded, unable to speak. "My name is Walter Nash," he said. "I'm a fraud investigator with First Colorado Community Bank. I've been trying to reach you for 4 days. I left messages at your station and with your mother." Behind me, Diane's voice cut through the air, sharp and defensive. "This is a private family matter. She's not part of this anymore." Walter Nash looked at her the way you look at a piece of furniture blocking a doorway, briefly and without much interest, before stepping past her entirely. "Ma'am," he said to me, "I need a few minutes of your time. It concerns a business loan taken out against Rourke's Diner 3 months ago." I felt the floor tilt slightly beneath me. "I don't know anything about a loan," I said. "I'm the trustee. Nothing gets borrowed against that property without my signature." "That," Walter Nash said quietly, opening his folder, "is exactly the problem we've identified." He laid out documents on a nearby bench, loan paperwork, bank statements, wire transfer records. The diner had taken out a business expansion loan for $140,000 4 months earlier, secured against the property itself. My signature was on the authorization page, a signature I had never written. "Your sister and Mr. Bennett submitted this application together," he explained, as co-applicants on a proposed restaurant renovation and expansion project called Bennett Rourke Hospitality Group. The funds were disbursed in 2 installments. Our internal review flagged inconsistencies in the notarization on your signature page roughly 6 weeks ago, which triggered our investigation. I looked past him, through the open doorway, into the courtroom where Tyler stood frozen beside my sister, both of them staring at me with expressions I had never seen on either of their faces before. Not embarrassment exactly. Something closer to the look of people who had done careful math and just discovered the numbers didn't hold. "Where did the money go?" I asked. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, flat and very far away. "Approximately $90,000 was used as a down payment on a commercial property downtown," Walter Nash said. "Currently held under Bennett Rourke Hospitality Group, an LLC formed by Mr. Bennett and Miss Rourke 5 months ago. 5 months ago. Before the engagement announcement had even reached half our extended family. Before I had picked out my dress. Before Bailey had sat across from me at that dinner, laughing about how nervous I looked during the alterations fitting. "I want to walk in there with you," I said. Walter Nash studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Stand at the back. Let me handle the paperwork." We walked back into that courtroom together, and the silence that greeted us was different this time. Heavier, colder. My mother's eyes found mine and something in her face crumpled. My grandmother's hand tightened around her cane. Walter Nash approached the front of the room with the same unhurried calm he'd carried through the doorway. "Mr. Bennett," he said, "I have documentation here regarding irregularities in the loan application for Bennett Rourke Hospitality Group. You'll need to contact the bank's fraud department directly, and depending on findings, this matter may be referred for criminal review regarding forged authorization." Tyler's face had gone the color of chalk. Bailey's hand slipped out of his, slowly, like she was trying to distance herself from something radioactive. She looked at me, and for just a moment, I saw something that might have been regret flicker across her face before it hardened back into something more defensive. "I didn't know it would go this far," she said quietly. I looked at my sister, the girl who used to sit on the flour sack beside me doing homework in our father's kitchen, the girl I had trusted with the trust our father left us. And I said the only thing that felt true in that moment. "You knew enough, Bailey. You knew exactly enough." I didn't wait for a response. I turned, walked to where my mother stood, and let her wrap her arms around me. I let myself feel it, all of it, for about 10 seconds. Then I stepped back, wiped my face, and said, "Let's go home." My grandmother took my arm on one side, my mother on the other, and we walked out of that courthouse together, leaving behind a room full of people who had built an entire secret life on the back of my trust and my absence. The weeks that followed were slow and difficult, in a way that doesn't photograph well or make for a satisfying single scene. I hired an attorney named Renee Callahan, a sharp, patient woman who had handled family trust disputes for over a decade. Within the first week, we formally froze all activity on the diners, accounts, and filed a police report regarding the forged signature. The bank's internal investigation confirmed what Walter Nash had already found. My signature had been forged using a notary who, it turned out, had a prior disciplinary complaint on file for exactly this kind of shortcut. The criminal case against Tyler moved slowly through the system over the following 10 months. He was ultimately charged with forgery and fraud related to the loan application. Bailey was named as a co-applicant but avoided criminal charges after her attorney negotiated a civil settlement, agreeing to sign over her share of the trust and repay a portion of the diverted funds over a 5-year period. Bennett Rourke Hospitality Group dissolved before it ever opened a single door. The commercial property downtown, the one purchased with money borrowed against my father's diner without my knowledge, was sold at a loss 8 months later to cover outstanding debts. Tyler and Bailey's marriage, the one performed an hour ahead of schedule in a room full of people who loved me, lasted 4 months. I heard about the divorce from my mother, who heard it from our old family accountant, who still did some part-time bookkeeping for the diner, and happened to run into Tyler's business partner at a gas station of all places. I did not feel joy hearing that news. I felt tired, the specific tired that comes after carrying something heavy for a very long time and finally setting it down. I recovered eventually, about 70% of what had been taken through a combination of the bank settlement and Bailey's repayment plan. Not everything, but enough that the diner survived. Enough that my father's name still hangs above that door on the west side. Still open 24 hours. Still serving the same pancake recipe. I make sure the new manager gets exactly right. Caleb, the boy from the highway, came by the fire station 4 months later with his mother to say thank you in person. He was walking without a limp by then, a little shy, holding a card his class had made with crayon drawings of ambulances on the front. His mother hugged me for what felt like a full minute and said, "You didn't leave him." I have thought about that sentence more times than I can count since then. You didn't leave him. I stayed for that boy on the worst morning of my entire life, and it cost me a wedding, and it revealed a betrayal I might never have uncovered otherwise. I would still make that same choice again without a single second of hesitation. I don't have a tidy conclusion about family, or trust, or what it means to be quietly erased from your own life by people who were supposed to protect you. What I have is this. I moved out of the apartment Tyler and I shared and found a small house near the diner with a front porch my father would have loved. I still work the same shifts. I still show up when the radio calls my name. I adopted a retired search and rescue dog named Scout who sleeps against my legs every night and doesn't require a single explanation for anything. Diane never called to apologize. I never expected her to. Bailey and I do not speak often now, though we are not entirely estranged either. Some wounds close slowly, in their own time, on their own terms. And I have stopped trying to force that timeline into something it isn't ready to be. What I know for certain is this. On the morning, everything fell apart. My hands were exactly where they needed to be, holding pressure on a wound that mattered, keeping a child breathing until help arrived. Everything else that happened that day, the forged signature, the moved ceremony, the sister who chose someone else's plan over my trust, all of it was already set in motion long before I ever walked through those courthouse doors. I did not create that betrayal by choosing to save a stranger's life. I simply arrived, finally. At the moment, it could no longer stay hidden. I will take that trade every single time.